Hey there, Mr. Reddit here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled Parent Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. Am I the jerk for refusing to accommodate my niece's vegan diet? After that, Neckbeard tries to buy cheap parts to save money on his computer build. And after that, am I the jerk for pressing charges when my stepson took something my daughter inherited from her mother? Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen doesn't get any vegan food. What makes you think I want any of that stuff anyways? So please smash that like button. And if you're new, subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Am I the jerk for refusing to accommodate my niece's vegan diet? My sister and her husband both lost their jobs, and as we had the space, we allowed them to move in with us. They have 2 daughters who are both vegan. Now, my wife and I have 4 kids. Our 2 older girls are very sweet, and our boys both have autism. We essentially work our daily lives around them to make them more comfortable. As such, our meal plans are relatively simple. Some of the only foods they will both eat is chicken and cheese, so every meal we eat has at least one of those components. Of course, neither of these items are vegan. Our nieces both complain, and as we need mealtime to be relatively stress-free for the boys, it's caused some problems. On top of this, we also have 4 dogs, 1 family dog, 1 dog who is a trained autism service dog, and our eldest daughter adopted 2 dogs at the beginning of April last year. Our oldest is doing an animal welfare course at college and plans on becoming a vet/dietitian. She explained the benefits of raw food, and as such, she prepares all 4 dogs' meals in the morning and refrigerates their evening meals. We don't force her. She chooses to do the other 2 dogs because she wants to get it perfect for them. Anyway, our 2 nieces are complaining about never being able to eat because there's always meat around. They refuse to eat at mealtimes because we serve meat and dairy. I explained that we aren't going to upturn meal plans we've had in place for years just for them. They could either deal with it or make their own food. They're both on hunger strikes, but I don't think I'm in the wrong. I offered to serve the sides, which are generally vegan, in larger portions for them, but cooking several different meals is not something I want to go back to. My sister is staying out of it, and her husband is just happy he's finally getting to eat meat again. My wife thinks I'm being harsh, but when I suggested she take over cooking, she suddenly agreed with me. Am I the jerk? What do you think? Is OP the jerk or his nieces? Please let us know. Beggars can't be choosers. Next. Neckbeard tries to buy cheap parts to save money on his PC build. Since my last story went over so well, I guess I will share another from my time at Macro Point. Now, some people believe the customer is always right. This is a problematic belief. The truth is, most of the time, the customer is an entitled jerk, but you're supposed to perform admirably anyway. This gets harder when you're dealing with anyone who thinks they know something that they do not. So a guy comes into my department and I greet him at the carpet. I tended to be Johnny on the spot whenever someone came in. Welcome to our build your own department. I'm Animaus. What are we putting together today? The man scoffs at me and says, "A computer, obviously." All attitude. He was a neckbeard wearing a My Chemical Romance shirt, pants so tight that he had a mushroom top, and mismatched shoes. This was obviously on purpose, as both shoes were clean, just didn't fit his look. I didn't take much time examining him. My dad had always told me I got to get the measure of a man with a glance and look him in the eye the whole time. He literally used to test us on this crap. Turn, look, then tell him what cars we saw in that split second. I was decent enough at it, but not great. I instead would tell myself little lyrics on the fly to remember key details. It's become a life habit. I explained this to point out that I wasn't staring at his look, so I'm pretty sure the snickering hens in the general section who didn't work for us were the source of his ire about being judged about his look. He took my smiles as me thinking something was funny. I feigned ignorance, like I didn't hear him, and then when he asked again, I apologized and asked him to speak louder. Told him I was hard of hearing. This relaxed him a bit, thinking I couldn't possibly have heard the hens giving him the business. I did, but I wasn't going to show it. With an attitude, he handed me a list and leaned forward shouting, "I don't want to be sold nothing. Here's what I need. Go get it." I look at the list and it's pretty thorough. Names of items and SKU numbers. I'm like, bet. This looks like a full build. Good money, though a lot of them I identify as cheaper parts. I tell him it'll take me a few minutes and invite him to take a look around in case he sees anything else he might need. He rudely says he'll wait there and he ain't buying anything else. So don't try none of my snake oil sales crap on him. I smiled and said, "Oh no, but it's so good for the joint and muscles." He didn't think it was funny, so I just walked away and got his stuff. Halfway through grabbing his items, I realized that he only looked at prices and not what each thing did. His build had an AMD processor, but he wanted an Intel board. The case he wanted was slim, and the video card he wanted would not fit. He needed the lower profile, though the Intel board had integrated graphics, so I wasn't sure why he picked a card. Also, the power supply he wanted was of lower quality and wattage than the one that came with the case. All in all, I was compelled to ask what the heck he was trying to build. I gathered everything quickly and brought it up, going over each piece with him and getting his approval. I then asked him if all of this was for the same build, which he replied with a something smart like, "Wow, how observant of you," or something like that. I smiled and tried to inform him that some of those parts would not work together, but he simply cut me off. "Listen, I don't need you trying to upsell me. I've been building computers for a while. I know what I'm doing." He did not, and I wanted to question that validity of his claim. I asked him then if he would like to hear about our return policy just in case. He got belligerent, telling me he knows what he's doing, and how dare I treat him like he's stupid just because of the way he looks. Granted, he did look stupid, but I think his ire was more for the cute girls giving him crap and some insecurity versus anything I said. "Alrighty, you are not interested in our return policy or extended warranty policy, right?" I confirmed. We're supposed to ask about the warranties for everyone, but I figured he was not going to take kindly to that, so all I wanted to do was cover my bases. "Warranties are for suckers. Do I look like a sucker?" he snapped. Yes, he did, but I wasn't going to say that. I just smiled at him and asked if I could double check his list to see if I got everything. I whipped out my phone and took a picture of everything, along with the list. I knew most of this was coming back and let him go about his day. I didn't even sticker it. I knew what was coming. 2 days later, Neckbeard shows back up. Muffin top, 2 different pairs of shoes, and an anime t-shirt that made Goku look like he had a fisheye head. He looked embarrassed and angry. He had with him someone who I at first thought was his girlfriend, a little Latino woman who I was certain was either blind or a gold digger, but turned out to be his sister. Absolutely no resemblance. She was friendly and told me she was trying to build a gaming computer to play Crysis. I was a little incredulous, young, and to be honest, at the time, did not think girls played games like that. So I turned to him and said, "Crysis?" And he shrugged. Little lady stepped up and reiterated herself, with a bit of friendly mocking cause she knew what I was thinking. Apparently she got crapped for being a gamer girl. I just shrugged and told the truth. There was no way in heck that previous build was gonna play Crysis very well. The brother, whom I'm going to call Neckbeard from here on out, had an attitude. He said yeah and handed me another list, this one similar to before. He made no explanation for his previous mistake and just told me to get the new items, along with the same line about not upselling him. I looked at the list and knew right away that build wasn't gonna play that game very well. I mean, I could get him there with a $1,500 build, barely, but this was something like $900, and that video card, don't remember what it was not going to cut it. I told him so, and that maybe he should look at the game's specs online, which would help him make a better decision. He told me he had done his homework and to just get what he said. I looked at his sister, pleading, and told her that I could come up with a system that was both affordable and would run the game decently. He interjected and got mad, threatening to get another salesperson. I said okay, but I knew he would be back again. As I'm getting his stuff, I hear him, away from his sister, on the phone. He's telling someone that he wants to finish this up and get the build done. Apparently, his parents had allocated some money for this, and he was trying to get a cheap system so he could keep the rest of the money. A real jerk move, but not my problem. I gathered what he asked for and sent them on their way. Didn't tag this stuff either. It was either coming back or could go to the pool. I saw Neckbeard 2 days later with little sister in tow and his parents. He was not dressed like a disaster that day. His parents did all the talking. There was no list. They told me they had trusted their son to get this done because he was good with computers, but the game wasn't working properly and they were trying to get everything together for their daughter's birthday, which had apparently passed after the first time I met Neckbeard. The parents then told me they only had $3,000 to spend on this computer. They had looked up the average price of high-end gaming rigs and wanted to buy an Alienware, but were convinced by their son to build it themselves, possibly so he can control what they spent. $3,000? This man was trying to snake his parents out of like $2,000 with these crappy builds. They told me to put together something that would work, and I smiled at Neckbeard and said, "With a $3,000 limit?" They confirmed, and I grinned. Cue malicious compliance. I tell them I can definitely do that, and ask if they want to come with me and discuss each part piece by piece, and why I think they need it for the game. I go with them, and I build a $3,000 system. Neckbeard is losing his crap. "Why do we need this? Why do we need that?" But no one will listen to him because of his previous failures. I built a system that I'd be proud to own, and got it around $2,700, and then explained the warranty and how they would have us build it and have parts and labor on that warranty. Of course, they took it. Neckbeard was angry because we went a little over, and I even talked his parents into getting a boss monitor for the game. These I certainly stickered. If Neckbeard hadn't been such a jerk, I'd have built him a system that could play the game, and he would have been able to go about his fiendish plan and keep his parents' change. Instead, he got nothing, and his sister got a build that she loved and a case that she apparently always wanted, a white Antec with purple fans. Moral of the story is, don't be a jerk to your salesman. Tell them what you want and need, and they will accommodate most times, or at the very least, know what the heck you're doing. If he had known computers like he claimed, this wouldn't have been an issue. Either way, I'm glad things didn't work out for him, and this time, there were no returns. Speaking of computers, have you ever played any PC games? And if so, which ones? Please let us know. Minecraft and Among Us for the win. Am I the jerk for pressing charges when my stepson took something my daughter inherited from her mother? I, male 47, have been with my wife for 2 years. She has a 21-year-old son. I have a 14-year-old daughter from my previous marriage. My late wife passed away in 2014. She left a few things for our daughter, including a gold jewelry set. Her mom was devastated she didn't get to gift the set to our daughter on her wedding day. I keep it in my closet since it's expensive and my daughter is too young to have it. I'll hopefully gift it to her on her wedding day. Last week, we were sitting in the kitchen when my stepson was hesitant to ask me something. We're in good terms, but have our fair share of arguments. He said his fiancée was taking something from his mother's and my closet, saw the jewelry set and liked it very much. He asked if he could borrow it so his fiancée can wear it at her cousin's wedding. I found this unacceptable, and I told him his fiancée had no business being in the bedroom and that the jewelry isn't mine, it's for my daughter. He asked me if my daughter will agree to let him borrow it if he talked to her. I told him not to even talk about it again. He got all upset and said things I do not remember. Saturday night, when he and his fiancée were at the wedding, I discovered that the jewelry set was gone. I told my wife, and we looked all over the house. I called my stepson to tell him about calling the police because I really thought someone stole the set. He said there was no need, that he borrowed it and will return it after they get back from the wedding. I yelled at him and told him to come back with it right then. I kept calling him till 12 a.m. when he told me to stop calling and that he'd bring it in the morning. I couldn't sleep that night. I felt terrible. In the morning, he showed up at 10 a.m. He didn't bring it and started stalling, saying he forgot. He'd bring it the next day. At this point, it was clear he gifted it to his fiancée and was stalling. I got so mad, I told him I will be pressing charges if he doesn't return the set today. We got into an argument. My wife said his fiancé was the one who wanted the jewelry set, but he was the one who took it, and it's not even mine, it's my daughter's, which made it worse, because I'm responsible for whatever happens to it. His grandparents berated me after I told him this and got mad and defended him when I said that I will be pressing charges. He stole and needed to be responsible for his actions. He didn't respond to my final calls, so now I've given him one last chance and it's over. I pressed charges today. They're saying calling the police was extreme and cruel. They're all convincing me to back down. Am I the jerk for pressing charges? He was replying to me sarcastically when I said I'd get the authorities involved if he didn't take me seriously. His mom said she had tried to talk to him, but I had enough of him stalling, hoping I'll just let it go so he can make his fiancée happy. I feel like an irresponsible idiot. I can't even look at my daughter without feeling frustrated and infuriated. I'm hurt, but what's worse is that this is my daughter's property that I couldn't take care of. My wife allows them into the room, although I told her not to several times, and they're not kids, and there should be some boundaries. I just needed to mention that we're in Europe. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk, or is his stepson? Please let us know. It's not often these stories make me angry, but this one really did. I hope that punk rots in jail. My school spends $1,200 going behind my back, ends up letting me get out of a week of classes. So this happened years ago, 2009, when I was a junior in high school. I was 16 at the time and a theater kid at my high school. Specifically, I was what we referred to as a techie, meaning that we did all the technical aspects of the show. Things like building the sets, lighting, sound, and makeup, among other things. Now, my school was in a pretty affluent area, suburbs of LA. We were near Malibu. Because of that, the arts were a pretty big deal for the school and community. I focused on the lighting aspect and really enjoyed it. I was never really popular at school, as I always felt out of place. I grew up in a different area and did not know anyone. Also, my family didn't really have money like everyone else. We lived in a trailer park, so I was self-conscious about that. So I kinda threw my whole life into the theater. I normally would not leave school until 11 or 12 at night, since we were always either getting ready for a show or striking from the last show. Since I spent more time in the theater than I did in class, I knew things about that building no one else in the school did. It got to the point where I was basically an employee for the school. I ran every function which utilized the theater or auditorium and had keys to every building. Thinking back to it, I'm not sure how legal it was. Normally, there are special lights used for theater, but our director that year, it was her first year at the school, liked to add normal lamps and lights to the sets themselves. She was a horrible person and very mean to her students and actors, especially the tech side. She hated me because I did everything I could to keep her away from my crew. I could really look out for the actors, but if she tried to yell at my crew, I would intervene, or they would walk away and tell her to take it up with me. By this time, I had become the informal leader of the techies, and nothing really could happen in the theater or auditorium since I was the only one who knew how to keep it all working. I kept trying to explain to her that this was not good practices or probably even safe, as I was not an electrician. We had an old system and I had to rewire stage pins, special plug/socket for stage lights, as they draw far more power, to work with a regular 3-prong that you would use in the house. She, however, really wanted the set to look like a real house, so I followed her wishes and rigged it up. Now this is where things started to go wrong. Every light gets plugged into a specific socket with a specific number, which corresponds to a specific slider on our lighting board in the back. Our board was an old mechanical one because the school didn't want to upgrade to the newer one. If the slider was pushed too far up, the normal lamps, what we called bulbs, would burn out and cause the dimmer switch, think a big breaker, to flip. My only solution to this was to put tape on the slider, making sure it could not get to the point which would cause the breaker to flip. This normally would work, but since we would run a show for 4 weeks, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and 2 Saturday shows, we were blowing through lamps and tripping the dimmer switch once or twice a week. On our final show closing night, the dimmer switch tripped and we had to call a 5-minute so I could fix it. Only this time, flipping the dimmer back wasn't returning power, and worse, all the other lights were out as well, not just the one I had wired myself. Pretty quickly, I figured out the issue wasn't the dimmer switch itself and had to be something else since the whole box lost power. I was pretty sure what the problem was, but did not say anything yet, as I hated this director and wanted to see what she would say. She started to yell at me before I could explain. Luckily, the assistant principal was there and we were cool, so he asked me what we needed to do. I told him that I could probably fix it, but I wasn't sure how long it would take. While I had a pretty good idea what the issue was, I didn't want to make promises I couldn't keep. The director heard this and said she no longer trusted me with this theater and she wanted to hire a professional to look at the dimmer box. She was saying since I broke it, I obviously did not know how to fix it. I shrugged and said okay, but a technician from the company is going to be expensive and we have an old system. I offered to at least try first and maybe save the school money. She flatly refused, so closing night for that show ended before intermission and the school refunded all the tickets. That Monday, I learned she managed to convince the principal to hire the technician and that he will be there later that week. I don't remember the exact day. So I get pulled out of class to help show the technician the box, explain what went wrong, and help him if I could. Once I show him the dimmer box, he takes one look and says the company no longer makes that model and he has no idea how to fix it. He spent 30 minutes or so playing around with it, but couldn't get it to work, and honestly, I don't think he cared that much. After school, the principal said they ended up having to pay him $1,200, and the director probably would not be coming back next year. He asked me if I could try to fix it. I said yes, but it might take me a few days, and since rehearsals took place after school, I could only work during class hours. He excused me from all of my classes. At this point, I already knew what the problem was, because I came in on Sunday alone to test my theory. See, the building has 2 separate breaker boxes. The main one everyone knows about, which is in the back next to our panel saw, and the one only I knew about, which was behind the dimmer box. Since the dimmer box was bolted to the wall, no one bothered to check. I only knew because the year before I dropped a wrench behind it and had to unbolt it to get my wrench back. I fixed the problem in less than an hour, told the principal it would be a good 2 or 3 days, and just spent that time working in the theater, messing around with my friends, and getting a head start on the next show. Am I the jerk for telling the people in my church why my brother stopped going? My brother, 32, male, is a doctor at our local state hospital. He enjoys the work and is very happy with his profession. However, he puts in nearly 70 hours a week, and that isn't helped by what's going on. The issue is, once people learn my brother is a doctor, they treat him like free healthcare. He really can't go anywhere where people know he will be without being stopped and asked for his opinion or his advice. My brother doesn't keep this a secret, and he has told people before that he's trying to enjoy his time off. He always apologizes, however, it's rarely enough for people. My brother stopped going to church with our parents, which my father understood. It got to a point where my brother started joking that he was going to need to open up a clinic in the church just to get out by noon. My mother wasn't happy with the joke, and she was pretty upset that he stopped going to church with them. It's not really a secret in our family. There is a source of pride from my mom, but my brother doesn't care anymore. People have been asking where he is, and I told them the truth. I told them my brother worked nonstop all week, and when he was off, he shouldn't be expected to work. Everyone seemed taken aback with my reply, and my mom was livid. She said I embarrassed her, and it wasn't my place to speak up. My dad told my mother I was right, and their son's job wasn't a source of her pride, but the son himself should be. My dad went on to tell people his son worked like a dog to help people, and if his mind isn't rested, then mistakes can be made. He asked a former cook why he doesn't come over to his house and cook. Yeah, it didn't go over well. My brother laughed, but said a church isn't the place to say that. Most of the people are elderly, so it's probably not a place he should be if he wants to enjoy being in the crowd. I feel bad, but I think these people need to be told. Am I the jerk? Edit. Service is being held outside and we are socially distancing. I'm aware that many of you think that it being held at all is ridiculous. If you've ordered takeout once since March, you're a hypocrite. You're financing people working together in close quarters. You've gone grocery shopping, right? Did you go at 1 in the morning to avoid crowds? Where did you shop? Why a supermarket where you force people to work closely together? Farmers markets are a thing. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. I feel personally attacked. Leave me and my takeout alone. Customer returns damaged merchandise, but swears it was like that when he bought it. Seriously? Back in the mid-1980s, I worked at a chain record store that sold records, tapes, t-shirts, and other music-related items. One day I was standing at the front register waiting for customers to check out, and in walks a very angry-looking man. He tosses 2 45 RPM records on the counter and said, "I want to return these." I looked down at the 245s and noticed that they were warped. And when I say warped, I mean they had more waves than Farrah Fawcett's hair on her famous poster. These 45s put Shirley Temple to shame. It was summer, so it was pretty obvious that these records were left in the man's car all day. I said, "Sir, we can't take these back. They've obviously been damaged by the sun." I kid you not. He looked me square in the eyes and said, "I didn't do a thing to them. They were that way when I bought them. Now, I want a refund." Dumbfounded, I asked, "You actually bought them like that?" He had the presence of mind to look embarrassed, but recovered quickly and asked to speak to our manager. I called over to Jimmy, the assistant manager on duty, and started to explain the issue. The customer interrupted and said, "I want to return these, but your employee here won't help me." Now, Jimmy was an imposing guy with a no-nonsense attitude. I fully expected him to kick this poor, delusional soul out of the store, but he surprised me by saying, "Okay." Honestly, to say I was surprised is an understatement. I was shocked. Jimmy came around the counter to the register, processed the return, and threw the 45s in our return box. He turned to the customer and said, "Will there be anything else, sir?" The customer smiled smugly and replied, "I don't know if I'll be back here anymore if y'all hire people like her." Jimmy just smiled and said, "That will be fine, sir. We don't want to deal with any more warped records either." The man just huffed and walked out of the store. Jimmy turned to me and said, "Better to return $2 worth of merchandise than to lose a good customer, but I think in this case, we got the short end of the deal." Am I the jerk for stopping my friend from getting a job at my workplace after she drove me out of our last job? My friend, Leah, and I met at university. I was a mature student, starting at 23. In our final year, a new lecturer, Jamie, joined the staff. It was his first year of lecturing, and he was only a couple of years older than me. Jamie and I stayed in touch after I graduated. Leia and I got jobs in the same workplace, which had close ties to our university. Jamie and I got closer and eventually ended up dating. When we were ready to tell people, I told Leia, who immediately turned it into office gossip. This didn't cause any professional repercussions for me or Jamie, but because the workplace was tied to the university and it was a very competitive environment, I ended up being the subject of a lot of comments. I decided to find another job. After I left, Leia apologized for spreading the rumor, saying she didn't think it would be a big deal, and I forgave her. But I've not been eager to share much with her since then. This has been reinforced by Leia still being a gossip, telling me about the private lives of all my old coworkers without prompting. Leia lost her job back in June. She told me in December that she had put in a CV at my workplace and mentioned my name, hoping I would put in a good word for her. My supervisor, who does the hiring, emailed me to follow up on Leia mentioning me. I said I worked with Leia, and while she was good at the actual work, we'd had some personal issues, and explained. I said if they did hire her, I'd work with her and we could be professional, but due to the working environment we have, I'm not sure introducing a gossiper would be a good idea. My supervisor said she'd take that into consideration. Leia didn't get the job. She asked me if I'd put in a good word for her, and I hesitated when responding. She then directly asked if I gave her a bad reference, and I told her that I'd been honest and said she was a good worker, but I wasn't so sure about the culture fit. She lost it, calling me a fake friend and accusing me of sabotage, particularly as I previously forgave her for spreading the rumor at my last job. She wants me to email the supervisor back and retract the second half of my statement and ask them to reconsider her for the role. I've refused because I said what I said, and if I go back on it now, I look like an idiot. Plus, I'm pretty sure they hired someone anyway. Leia's called me a jerk and demanded I put this right. Am I the jerk for not helping her get hired here? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or is Leia? Please let us know. Definitely Leia. With an attitude like that, no wonder they blew up Alderaan. Entitled Mom pushes me away from my family in my wheelchair. A few years ago, I was living in Vegas, and an entitled mom literally wheeled me away from my family. I have a number of health issues, and after a few botched surgeries and neurological damage, I was bedridden. I never left my house/bed except for doctor's appointments. I hadn't been out at all for 2.5 years. I had worked really hard on my daily physical therapy, and my balance had greatly improved. My family came out for a visit. My husband was stationed at Nellis Air Force Base, and I was so excited to surprise them with my improvements. I could stand and walk, and was actually wearing pants. To celebrate, I wanted to go see the fountains at the Bellagio. For most people, this is a nice outing, but for me, this was years in the making. I was nervous I might get overtired and lost in the fast-moving crowds, so we had to bring my wheelchair. We knew the schedule for the fountains and arrived super early to secure a spot in front where I could see from my chair. It was such an important moment for all of us. We lined up by the fence, and no sooner did the show start, I felt this jerking on my wheelchair. I thought maybe someone had tripped on me, and I immediately looked up to apologize. I was pretty self-conscious and ashamed of being out in a wheelchair in such a big crowd. When I glanced up to apologize, I see this lady with a small kid on her hip, using one hand to literally pull me away from the fence. Because she was only using one hand, she spun me completely around to face the street. I was stunned. I could hear everyone reacting to the fountain show, and here I was, looking dumb, awkwardly facing a bunch of strangers. I yelled for my husband, but he couldn't hear me over the noise. I looked behind me, and this woman had plopped her kid up onto the guardrail, never made eye contact with me, never said one word to me, and had treated me like a piece of luggage. I tried to stand up, but the people around me had crowded me so much I didn't have room to push my chair back enough. I desperately looked around at the strangers in front of me, hoping that someone who had seen what had happened would help. It then dawned on me that this was a huge family/friend group. They all began nudging me aside, further and further away from my family. It all happened so fast. I found myself pushed into the walking area where people who weren't stopping to watch the fountain show were quickly trying to walk past. People couldn't see me through the crowd and were stumbling over/past me. I couldn't see my family anymore and was trying hard to push myself up out of my wheelchair the way my physical therapist had taught me. I felt someone grabbing my chair again and I panicked. I started yelling, "No, please no," and then realized it was my husband. He had glanced to check on me and to take a picture of me being out for the first time, and I was gone. He had to fight his way through the crowd, the same family group, to find me. I burst into tears. I didn't know why, but it was like all the trauma from the last few years hit me all at once. I told him they had pushed me away, and after putting it together, my husband was mad. He turned to this group of people and demanded to know who had pushed me away. By this time, the fountain show was pretty much over. The group initially just ignored my husband like they had me, until I pointed out the woman with her kid as the culprits. My family confronted her, nicely I might add, and tried to explain why a wheelchair is an extension of a person, etc. She at first pretended like she didn't speak English, but I had heard them talking amongst themselves in English while they pushed me into the walking area, and I told my husband as much. She then gave up that act and told my family about how I was in their way and probably couldn't see anyway, and the man with her claimed in a raised voice that in their country they don't take their shameful family members out in public, to which my husband responded, "If that were true, none of you would be here." I was even more shocked by his last sentence than being wheeled away. I managed the courage to tell them what he had said was BS and that I'm sure people in your country are actually kind and would be proud if I was their daughter. I remember the exact words I said because later I was very proud that I stood up to them. The group sort of collectively scoffed, spoke to one another quickly in what I think was Hindi, and slowly walked away as if nothing had happened. We didn't stay for the next show because I just wanted to go home. You definitely haven't seen this video yet, so please come watch it next and we'll see you when you get there. And please support our coffee addiction by joining as a channel member today, and we'll give you a special shout out in our next video. And to have us make any kind of special video you'd like us to, just come visit us on Fiverr, link pinned in the comments below.